Let's break down Andor Episode 7. Dubbed as a standalone episode, it instantly caught my interest. But how does it compare to Episode 6, which was widely regarded as the best Andor episode yet? Start off back at Cyril Khan's place as he's getting ready to go for his job interview arranged by Uncle Harlow. He's back at the table eating his cereal, and I'm starting to get used to these cereal sessions with Cyril, you know? His mum isn't too impressed with his jacket collar being raised, which was done by a tailor, saying it makes him look desperate for approval, which I would say is a pretty accurate assessment for Cyril at this time. Perhaps we'll see his character develop beyond that point as the show progresses. On the TV in the background, a news report of the attack on Aldhani flashes up, which catches Cyril's attention. Maybe something in his mind is linking the incident on Ferrix and Aldhani together. It seems inevitable at this point that Cyril will eventually find his way into the midst of the action once again. We cross over to the ISB, which carries on directly from where we left off in episode 6, where they're discussing the attack and putting into place the Empire's plans going forwards, which will bring in far harsher punishments to anyone who opposes the Empire, while sharply increasing taxes on any sector harvesting partisan activity, likely in a bid to force the locals to flesh them out. The ISB's reference to the partisans is particularly interesting, as it could indicate they are linking the attack to them, potentially unaware of just how many different rebellions are springing up throughout the galaxy. How Saul Guerrero will react to being blamed for this attack is yet to be seen, as it could have had implications on his grander plans going forwards, with the heightened security within the Empire now. The ISB official holding the meeting mentions Emperor Palpatine, and for me this was a lovely reminder of just what we're watching, directly tying the show into the main saga in the process. The officer informs the others that he spoke to the Emperor last night, which indicates it escalated to the Emperor very quickly, and that the ISB will now take the lead going forwards. Having no issues accessing military and naval resources as needed, on top of this the Emperor will be convening an emergency session in Senate in a bid to push through legislation that grants the ISB more power to operate freely. Hopefully we get to see Palpatine do this in a later episode and we don't skip it like we did the dinner party scene. Ed Ramiro isn't pleased to hear of the Empire increasing all anti-imperial activity to a Class 1 offence, carrying a much severer punishment on top of everything else they've just announced, believing it's playing into the rebels' hand. We enter Luthen's shop of antiquities where Mon Mothma arrives without warning and not impressed with the attack on Aldhani, feeling it can undermine the work she's been doing in the background. She suspects Luthen played a part in it and her suspicions are correct. I was surprised to learn that Mothma didn't know of the plan. I naturally thought it was something the entire circle was aware of. Working within the Empire herself, she understands better than most on the outside just how these actions will affect the innocent civilians living under the Imperial rule and just how much they will suffer. Whilst both Mon and Luthen are aware of the scale of the network they've been working to build, it's clear that Mon didn't feel it was yet ready, whereas Luthen felt it was. Here we start to see a different side of the rebellion, one where two sides have opposing ideas on just how to go about this. I'm curious to find out what their network actually consists of at this stage, who is involved with it already. We catch up with Cyril Khan, who is now at his job interview, which is on Coruscant, bringing him closer to the ISB. The job is within the Imperial Bureau of Standards, which is an office-based job, and Cyril seems thrilled with the prospect of it. Not. The person interviewing him listens to Cyril's take on what went down on Ferrix, which appears on his record, and the interviewer states that it will be amended to make the files look a little better, something his uncle will probably approve of, he said. We're unsure of who his uncle is at the moment, but he seems to be someone fairly high up. Now, I find this scene particularly interesting as we cut to Clea, Luthen's shop assistant, who isn't as uninvolved as I originally thought. Throughout the show, we've seen her talking to Luthen behind the scenes as more of his equal, rather than an employee, and she's clearly a player within this grand rebellion. She makes her way through a large building on Coruscant with a red hood up, acting as an efficient way to conceal her identity, just enough not to be recognised, but not enough to look suspicious and draw attention. She briefly stops outside of the entrance to either an apartment or an office where there is a small drawn symbol on the floor outside. Clea carefully steps on a section of the floor next to the symbol in what comes across as a way to communicate with someone before stepping off and continuing her journey. She arrives at her destination. It becomes clear she was sending a message to Val. Val has now made her way to Coruscant. Val seems surprised Luther didn't actually greet her in person, and this only increases my belief that she is Luthen's daughter. We learn from Clea that she actually recruited some members of the rebellion herself, which we saw on Aldhani, which shows she certainly has some sway. The purpose of this meet was to give Val her next mission, which is to tie up a loose end, Cassian Andor, who she knows as Clem. Clea says they can't simply let him roam around the galaxy knowing who Luthen is, what he's done and what he plans to do. It's too dangerous for the security and the secrecy of the rebellion. I can see Val tracking down Cassian, and in a similar fashion to how he did with Jyn Erso in Rogue One, she'll end up siding with him, and that's Cassian's gateway into the rebellion at some stage. We return to Dedra Meero, who's going against Imperial protocol and requesting data on all missing Imperial navigation, comm, targeting and avionics equipment over the last 2 years in an effort to piece together any patterns and movements present to confirm her suspicion that these are the actions of an organised rebel group. We briefly see Cinta on Aldhani, and it looks like she's just about to take off on a speeder when we see a Star Destroyer going over her, probably on its way to the Alkenzi Air Base. I think this is the lowest we've ever seen a Star Destroyer fly in Star Wars, and it was a pretty cool shot. Cassian returns home to Ferrix to find Marva, telling her that he's scored lucky and they finally have enough credits to leave the cold of Ferrix and relocate somewhere better, somewhere safer without the Empire. He really seems excited to be able to take his mother away from Ferrix. It's probably something they've talked about if they ever won the lottery kind of thing. Marva seems uneasy about the whole ordeal, and Cassian believes his mother's age and how late it is, as it would make it too tiring. It would be a little bit too much for her at the moment, informing her they'll leave in the morning. We cut to a gathering at Mon Mothma's place, which kind of makes up for us not seeing the dinner party. Now this gathering is full of various senators and Imperial officers. She meets up with an old friend and fellow senator Tay Kolma, who shares the same homeworld as Mothma, Chandrila. It's clear the two have a long established friendship outside of being colleagues, and this is the person Mothma told Luthen she would like to bring into the circle previously. He will be able to access the Mothma family fortune without drawing eyebrows, whereas Mothma cannot. The eyes are on her now more than ever. Grand Vizier, which I'll do a video about shortly, is the chief deputy of the Empire, and he's infiltrated her separatist coalition meetings, no doubt reporting back to Palpatine himself. Mothma refrains from telling Tay the extent of what she's working on and what she needs the money for, but Tay recognises it's a move against the Empire, and he's already expressed just how far away his politics currently are for the Imperial rule. I believe he will help her. She tells him the Mon Mothma everyone thinks they know is a lie, a disguise to hide what she's really doing, telling Tay this is a technique she learnt from Palpatine: show them the stone with one hand and they'll miss the knife under their throat. Now Cassian has gone to visit Bix, and it seems early in the morning as no one's around. Bix tells Cassian he shouldn't be there as the locals blame him for what happened, that he killed 2 officials and brought the trouble back home with him, resulting in them all having to live under the stricter rule of the Empire. Bix thinks Tim grasped Cassian up as he thought the two were back together, which tells us they were once an item. Cassian questions Bix on Luthen, who knows nothing about him, telling Bix if she ever sees him again to tell Cassian he held up his end of the bargain and to just forget about him, potentially worried Luthen may now come after him due to what he knows. Once Cassian leaves Bix's place, he walks past a couple of stormtroopers which trigger a flashback to the beginning of the Imperial reign. This is where we finally get that flashback of the clone troopers, guys. They're on Ferrix and you can hear a local shout, "Long live the Republic," whilst a few others throw stones. Now this is where Clem, Cassian's adopted father, the man who rescued him from Kenari alongside Marva, tells the locals to stop, that it will do more harm than good, as the clone troopers turn around and see Clem standing in the direction now of where the stones were thrown, resulting in him being hanged, which takes us back to what Luthen told us in episode 3 about his father being hung in the square. As Cassian returns home, he learns that Marva isn't leaving Ferrix, which I think will probably result in her death at some point, that she heard of a rebel attack on Aldhani. Unaware of Cassian's involvement, of course, she believes if there's heroes out there willing to fight the Empire directly, she can stand her ground and do what she can here. This conversation between Marva and Cassian is very well written and very emotional. Marva tells Cassian to stop searching for his sister, that no one survived on Kenari. Cassian doesn't understand Marva's decision to stay, but realises her mind is made up. Before leaving, he tells her he'll come back. Back at the ISB, Dedra is called out by a fellow officer during a meeting for breaking sector protocols, which she did by obtaining a 2-year history of missing Imperial objects. However, once learning that Dedra has pieced together information which does indeed point to an organised rebellion carrying out these attacks and robberies, the chief praises her work and assigns her to the Molana 1 case, telling her to watch her back afterwards, presumably from her colleagues that may be now out to get her. We jump to Cassian, who now finds himself on a planet called Niamos, which gives the mixture of Miami Ibiza kind of vibes. He's showering after spending the night with a lady who calls him Keith, a new persona he's adopted. After his shower, he walks to the local shop only to be stopped by a shore trooper and a KX security droid, which I think could become K2SO at some stage. Unaware of his true identity, he is falsely charged with civil disruption, anti-imperial speech, and fleeing the scene of anti-imperial activity. Charges that would usually bring a 6-month sentence that now hold a 6-year sentence due to the stricter measures brought in by the Empire after the Aldani attack. I think this episode was actually better than the last. There was less action in it, but I find myself being that much more interested in this story and these characters. Thanks for watching my breakdown, guys. I'll catch you in the next one. May the Force be with you.